The old trader had drunk too much star wine. His 4 eyes were cloudy, and his voice was loud in the quiet bar on Station Katha 7. The young ones gathered around him, their scales and feathers and smooth skin catching the dim light as they leaned in to hear his words. "I have been to the edge of the Orion Arm," the trader said. "I have seen the death world with my own eyes." The young ones laughed. Everyone knew the stories of the death world. Everyone knew they were lies. But the trader did not laugh. He set down his glass and his voice became quiet. "There is a yellow star out there, far from Coalition space. It has 8 planets. The third one should not have life. It should not have anything but rock and poison. But something lives there. Something that refuses to die." 3,000 light years away, Admiral Yuna stood on the bridge of her flagship and stared at the tactical display. Red lights covered half the map. Each red light was a star system that had fallen to the Dominion in the last cycle. "We lost contact with Veth 4 this morning," her navigator Taiho said. His voice was flat, tired. "The evacuation ships did not make it out." Yuna closed her eyes. Veth 4 had held 12 million souls. Now it held none. The Dominion was not an army. It was a hunger. It moved from system to system, consuming everything, leaving nothing behind but empty worlds and silence. The Coalition had fought them for 50 years. The Coalition was losing. How long until they reached the core worlds? Yuna asked. Taiho did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice was barely a whisper. 3 years. Maybe less. Yuna turned away from the display. She walked to the observation window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was help. Somewhere out there was hope. She just had to find it. That night, a probe returned from deep space. It was old and damaged, sent out centuries ago to map the edges of the galaxy. No one expected it to carry anything important, but it did. The probe had passed through a system called Sol. It had recorded radio signals from the third planet, voices, music, mathematics, signs of a civilization that had never been contacted, never been cataloged, never been known. G1. The Xenolinguist assigned to Yuna's fleet spent 3 days decoding the signals. When she came to Yuna's quarters, her hands were shaking. "The legends are true," G1 said. "The death world is real. And they call themselves humans." Yuna had heard the legends. Every child in the Coalition had heard them. Stories of creatures born on a planet that was nothing but danger. A world with a sun that burned the skin. Water that could crush ships in its depths. Mountains of frozen poison and deserts of burning sand. The air itself carried invisible killers that could destroy a body from inside. The story said. These creatures had not just survived. They had conquered their world. They had tamed fire and split the atom. They had built ships to cross oceans and machines to touch the sky. They fought each other in terrible wars and then rebuilt from the ashes. They climbed their deadly mountains for no reason at all. They dove into their crushing waters just to see what was there. The story said they could heal from wounds that would kill any other species. They could run for days without stopping. They could survive in heat and cold that would destroy Coalition soldiers in minutes. The story said they were monsters, but the stories also said something else. They said these creatures were loyal beyond reason. They said humans would die for strangers. They said humans never gave up, never stopped fighting, never accepted defeat. Yuna had always dismissed these stories as myths. Now she held proof in her hands. "I need to assemble a team," she said. "We are going to Seoul." Taiho thought she was crazy. He said so many times as they prepared the small ship for the journey. Yoonji, the security officer Yuna had chosen, agreed with him. Even Ji-won, who had decoded the signals, had doubts. "We do not know what we will find," Taiho said. The legends could be wrong. These humans could be peaceful scientists or savage killers. They could be extinct. They could be anything. They could be our only hope, Yuna replied. The journey to Seoul took 40 days. Yuna spent most of that time studying the signals the probe had recorded. She listened to human music, strange sounds that made her feel things she could not name. She watched fragments of their visual broadcasts, seeing faces that looked almost like coalition species, but not quite. 2 eyes, 2 arms. Soft skin in colors from pale to dark. They did not look like monsters. On the 40th day, the ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. Yuna stood at the observation window and looked at the yellow star in the distance. Somewhere near that star was the Death World. Somewhere near that star were the humans. Admiral, Yunji said suddenly, her voice sharp. We are being scanned. Yuna turned to the tactical display. A ship was approaching. It was small by coalition standards, angular and gray, covered in weapons. It moved fast, faster than any coalition patrol vessel. They are hailing us, Jiwan said. Yuna took a deep breath. This was the moment. Everything the coalition had hoped for, everything they had feared, came down to this. Open the channel, she said. The screen flickered. And for the first time in 3,000 years, a human face looked upon the coalition. He was older, with lines on his face and gray in his hair. His eyes were dark and steady. He wore a uniform of blue and white, and behind him, Yuna could see other humans moving, working, living. Unknown vessel, the human said. This is Captain Park Sung-ho of the Republic of Korea Navy ship Dekdo. Identify yourselves and state your intentions. Yuna stepped forward. Her heart was beating fast, but her voice was calm. Captain Sung-ho, she said. My name is Admiral Yuna of the Galactic Coalition 3rd Fleet. We have come a very long way to meet you. She paused, gathering her courage. We have come to ask for your help. Captain Park Sung-ho had seen many strange things in his 30 years of service. He had survived storms that sank other ships. He had faced enemies who wanted him dead. He had watched his world change in ways his grandfather could never have imagined, but he had never seen an alien. The creature on his screen was tall and thin, with blue-gray skin and large eyes that reflected the light like mirrors. She wore a uniform of silver and black, and she carried herself like someone who was used to giving orders. You want our help, Sung-ho repeated slowly. Yes, the alien said. Her name was Yuna, and she spoke through some kind of translation device that made her words sound flat and mechanical. Our people are dying. An enemy called the Dominion is destroying our worlds. We have heard stories of your species. We believe you may be able to help us fight. Sung-ho looked at his second-in-command, Lieutenant Hana. She was young, smart, and not easily surprised. But right now her eyes were wide and her mouth was hanging open. Did she just say they want us to help them fight a war? Hana whispered. That is what I heard, Sung-ho replied. He turned back to the screen. The alien admiral was waiting, her strange eyes watching him with something that looked like hope. Admiral Yuna, Sung-ho said carefully. I do not have the authority to speak for my planet, but I can take you to people who do. Will you follow my ship? Yuna agreed. The journey to Earth took 6 hours. Sung-ho spent most of that time on the communication system, talking to his superiors, explaining what had happened, trying to convince them that he was not crazy. By the time they reached Earth orbit, half the planet knew that aliens had arrived. Sung-ho guided the coalition ship into a landing zone in a place called Jeju Island. He had chosen it because it was beautiful, with green mountains and blue water and skies that were often clear. He wanted the aliens to see the best of his world. When the coalition ship opened and Admiral Yuna stepped out, Sung-ho was there to meet her. She was taller than he expected, nearly 2 meters, and she moved with a grace that made her seem like she was floating. Behind her came 3 others, a nervous-looking male called Taiho, a female with quick eyes called Ji-won, and a soldier named Yoonji, who kept her hand near her weapon. "Welcome to Earth," Sung-ho said. Yuna looked around. The sun was bright and hot, and she could feel its heat on her skin. The air was thick and full of strange smells. In the distance, she could hear sounds she did not recognize. Birds singing, waves crashing, wind moving through trees. "Your sun," she said quietly. "It is very strong." "Yes," Sung-ho agreed. "It can burn us if we stay in it too long. But we have learned to live with it." Ji-won was scanning the air with a small device. Her face went pale as she read the results. "Admiral," she said, "the atmosphere contains high levels of oxygen, and there are microorganisms everywhere. Thousands of different types. Some of them are dangerous." Sung-ho nodded. "Yes, we call some of them diseases. They can make us sick or kill us. We have been fighting them for thousands of years." Yoonji tightened her grip on her weapon. "How do you survive?" "Our bodies fight back," Sung-ho explained. "We have systems inside us that attack the diseases. Sometimes we win. Sometimes we do not. But we keep fighting." Over the next 3 days, Sung-ho and his crew showed the coalition team their world. They took them to cities full of millions of people, all living and working together in spaces that would have driven most species mad. They showed them hospitals where doctors cut open bodies to fix them and put them back together. They showed them schools where children learned to read and write and solve problems. They showed them a marathon, where humans ran for hours without stopping, pushing their bodies past limits that should have broken them. They showed them a mountain, covered in snow and ice, where climbers had died trying to reach the top, and where other climbers kept trying anyway. Why did they do this? Yuna asked, watching a video of a climber struggling through a storm near the peak. Why risk death for a mountain? Sung-ho thought about the question for a long moment. "Because it is there," he finally said. "Because they want to know if they can. Because giving up is not in our nature." Lieutenant Hannah took Ji-won to meet her family. They sat in the small house and ate food that Ji-won could not digest but pretended to enjoy. Hannah's grandmother was 90 years old, and she told stories of a war that had happened before Hannah was born. A war that had destroyed her country and killed millions of people. "But you rebuilt," Ji-won said. The old woman smiled. "We always rebuild. That is what we do." Chief Engineer Dongwoo showed Taiho the engine room of the Dokdo. It was hot and loud and full of machines that Taiho did not understand. Dongwoo explained each one, his hands moving as fast as his words, his eyes bright with love for his work. "Your technology is primitive by our standards," Taiho said carefully. "Your ships are slow. Your weapons are weak. How do you expect to fight the Dominion?" Dongwoo laughed. It was a warm sound, full of confidence. "We have been fighting with primitive technology since we lived in caves," he said. "We killed animals bigger than the ship with pointed sticks. We crossed oceans in wooden boats. We went to our moon in a machine that had less computing power than your translator device." He patted one of the engines like it was a pet. "Give us your technology. Give us a year. We will surprise you." On the 3rd day, Yuna met with the leaders of Earth. They gathered in a large room in a city called Seoul, representatives from every nation on the planet. They argued and debated and asked questions that show both fear and courage. In the end, they asked Yuna one question that mattered. "If we help you," the leader of a nation called Korea said, "if we send our people to fight your war, what will happen to them?" Yuna was silent for a long moment. She thought of the red lights on her tactical display. She thought of Veth 4 and its 12 million dead. "Some of them will die," she said honestly. Perhaps many of them. The Dominion is powerful, and they do not show mercy. The room was quiet. Yuna waited for them to refuse, to send her away, to protect their own people and leave the coalition to its fate. But the leader just nodded slowly. "Then we will honor them," she said. "And we will win." Yuna felt something strange in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it. It was hope. The message came on the 7th day. Yuna was in a meeting with human military leaders when her communication device began to flash red. She excused herself and stepped into the hallway. When she heard the voice of her second-in-command from the main fleet, her blood went cold. "Admiral, the Dominion has accelerated their attack. They hit 3 systems in the last 48 hours. The defense lines have collapsed. They are moving toward the core worlds." Yuna closed her eyes. "How long?" "6 months. Maybe less. Admiral, you need to come back. With or without the humans." She ended the call and stood alone in the hallway of the human building. Outside the window, she could see the city of Seoul stretching to the horizon. Millions of humans living their lives, unaware that a storm was coming that could destroy everything they knew. She had asked these people for help. She had shown them the danger. But now the danger had grown too great. She could not ask them to die for strangers. Yuna walked back into the meeting room. The human leaders looked at her, and she could see that they knew something was wrong. "The Dominion has accelerated their attack," Yuna said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "We have less time than we thought. I must return to my fleet immediately." General Kim Boyand, the commander of Earth's combined military forces, stood up. She was an older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had fought in wars herself, Yuna knew. She understood what was at stake. "How bad is it?" General Kim asked. Yuna did not want to answer. But she had promised these humans honesty from the beginning. "Very bad," she said. "The Dominion is coming faster than we predicted. Our defenses are failing. In 6 months, they will reach the heart of our civilization." She took a breath. "I cannot ask you to help us anymore. This war may already be lost. I will not drag your people into our extinction." The room was silent. Yuna waited for them to agree, to wish her luck, to send her on her way. General Kim Boyang did not sit down. Instead, she walked around the table until she was standing in front of Yuna. The human was shorter than the Admiral by almost half a meter. But somehow she seemed larger. "Admiral Yuna," General Kim said, "let me tell you a story." She pulled a photograph from her pocket. It showed a young woman in an old-fashioned military uniform, standing in front of a ruined building. "This is my grandmother," General Kim said. "She was 16 years old when an enemy invaded our country. They burned our cities. They killed our people. They tried to erase everything we were." She put the photograph away. "My grandmother survived. She fought. And when the war was over, she helped rebuild our nation from ashes. She raised a daughter who became a teacher. That daughter raised me. And now my own daughter serves on a ship at the edge of your territory, waiting to hear if we will come to help." General Kim looked Yuna in the eyes. "We do not abandon people who ask for help. That is not who we are. We did not survive 10,000 years of death and war and disaster by leaving others to die alone." She turned to the other leaders in the room. "I am calling for a vote. Do we help the coalition, knowing that our people may die? Do we enter this war, knowing that we may lose?" One by one, the leaders stood. One by one, they gave their answer. Every vote was yes. Within 72 hours, the first human fleet launched from Earth orbit. Yuna watched from the observation deck of her ship as the human vessels formed up around her. They were ugly by coalition standards, all sharp angles and exposed machinery. Their weapons were primitive. Their shields were weak. but there were so many of them. Captain Sung-Ho's ship, the Dokdo, took position at the front of the formation. Next to it flew a dozen other vessels from his nation. Behind them came ships from other human nations, large carriers from a place called America, sleek destroyers from a country called Japan, heavy cruisers from somewhere called Russia, and aboard these ships were humans, thousands of them. Soldiers and engineers and doctors and pilots, young and old, male and female, from every corner of their world. All of them volunteers. All of them willing to die for strangers they had never met. Yuna found Captain Sung-Ho on the bridge of the Dokdo. He was giving orders to his crew, his voice calm and steady. When he saw her, he smiled. "Admiral," he said, "are you ready to go home?" "I am ready," Yuna replied. "But I am not sure my people are ready for you." Sung-Ho laughed. "We will try not to scare them too much." Lieutenant Hannah approached with a data pad. "Captain, I have the final crew roster for the assault teams." Yuna looked at the names on the screen. She did not know these humans yet, but she would learn. Each name was a life. Each name was a family somewhere on Earth, waiting for their loved one to come home. Yunghwa, a sniper from a mountain village who could hit a target from 3 kilometers away. Mai Rei, a doctor who had worked in war zones and disaster areas, who could operate on a patient while the world exploded around her. Seojin, a fighter pilot who had broken 17 speed records and never lost a simulated battle. Hyunwoo, a Marine commander who had led rescue missions in the most dangerous places on Earth. "These are your best soldiers?" Yuna asked. "Some of them," Sung-Ho said. "The best are everywhere. We did not keep them in one place." The fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel. The journey would take 30 days. During that time, Yuna watched the humans prepare. They trained constantly. They practiced fighting in simulations, learning how to face enemies they had never seen. They studied coalition tactics and Dominion weapons. They adapted and improved and invented new strategies that Yuna had never considered. Chief Engineer Dongwu worked with coalition engineers to upgrade the human ships. Within a week, their weapons were twice as powerful. Within 2 weeks, their shields could withstand Dominion fire. Within 3 weeks, they had built something new, missiles that could track Dominion ships through their own wormholes. "How did you do this?" Taiho asked, amazed. Dongwu shrugged. "We have been building weapons to kill each other for 10,000 years. This is just the same thing, but bigger." On the 29th day, the fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of coalition space. Yuna looked at the tactical display and felt her heart sink. The Dominion had moved faster than predicted. A massive fleet was gathered near a planet called Keth Prime, preparing to invade. If Keth Prime fell, the path to the core worlds would be open. "We need to stop them here," Yuna said. General Kim Boyao, who had come with the fleet to lead the ground forces, studied the display. "Their fleet outnumbers us 3-1, she observed. "Yes," Yuna said quietly. "I understand if you want to withdraw." General Kim looked at her with those sharp, steady eyes. "Admiral," she said, "my people have a saying. It does not matter how many enemies you face. It only matters that you fight." She turned to her officers. "Prepare for battle." The Dominion fleet hung in space like a swarm of dark insects. 300 ships, each one larger than anything the humans had ever built. At their center floated the command vessel, a massive thing of black metal and red lights. Home to the Sovereign Voice, who led the Dominion's advance, the Sovereign Voice sent a message to the combined fleet. Its voice was cold and empty, like wind blowing through dead trees. "You are nothing. You will be consumed. Surrender now, and your end will be quick. Resist, and you will suffer." General Kim Boyao looked at Captain Sung-Ho. He looked back at her. A small smile crossed her face. "Tell the Dominion," she said, "that we have a response for them." The communication officer sent the message. It was simple. 3 words: "Come and take." The battle began. The Dominion fleet moved forward like a wave, expecting to crush the smaller force in minutes. They had done this 100 times before. They had never lost, but they had never faced humans. The human ships did not form neat lines like coalition vessels. They did not follow predictable patterns. They scattered and regrouped and attacked from angles that should have been impossible. They dove into the Dominion formation, fired their weapons at point-blank range, and escaped before the enemy could respond. On the bridge of the Dokdo, Captain Sung-ho gave orders in a calm voice while chaos exploded around him. Hard left. Engines to maximum. Fire all missiles in turn before they hit. The ship spun on its axis, a movement that would have killed any coalition crew. But the humans were strapped into their seats, their bodies built to survive forces that would crush other species. Lieutenant Hana shouted numbers from her console. Enemy ship destroyed. Another one coming from starboard. 2 more behind it. Dongwoo, Sung-ho called to his engineer. "I need more power to the shields." "You will have it in 10 seconds, Dongwoo's voice came back. "Or we will all be dead, so it will not matter." In space, the battle raged like a storm. Human ships weaved through enemy fire, striking and retreating and striking again. Coalition vessels followed their lead, learning their tactics, adapting to their madness. But the real fight was on the surface of Kath Prime. Commander Hyun-woo led the first wave of Marines down to the planet. The Dominion had already landed ground forces, thousands of soldiers preparing to take the capital city. The coalition defenders were falling back, overwhelmed. Hyun-woo's transport hit the ground hard. The door opened, and he was running before the dust had settled. "Move! Move! Take cover behind those buildings." His Marines followed, spreading out through the ruined streets. They were outnumbered 10 to 1. They did not care. The fighting was brutal. The Dominion soldiers were larger than humans, covered in black armor that seemed to absorb light. They carried weapons that could melt stone and vaporize metal. But the humans kept coming. Junghwa found a tall building overlooking the main road into the city. She set up her rifle and began to shoot. Each shot found its target. Each shot took down an enemy soldier. For 4 hours she held that position alone, firing again and again until her weapon was almost too hot to touch. The Dominion commanders believed they faced 100 snipers. They sent a whole company to find her. She killed them 2 in the city center. Medic Myre set up a field hospital and a bombed-out school. Wounded soldiers from both the coalition and human forces were brought to her, their bodies broken and bleeding. She worked without rest, her hands steady even as explosions shook the walls. A coalition soldier looked up at her with dying eyes. "Why?" he asked. "Why are you helping us?" Myre did not stop working. Her fingers moved fast, sealing wounds, stopping bleeding, fighting death. "Because you need help," she said simply. "That is enough." In space, the battle was turning. The human tactics had confused the Dominion. Their formation was breaking. Ships that should have been supporting each other were scattered and isolated, but the command vessel remained untouched. The sovereign voice directed the battle from its center, protected by dozens of guardian ships. As long as it survived, the Dominion would not give up. Pilot Sajin sat in the cockpit of her fighter, watching the command vessel on her screen. She had already destroyed 7 enemy ships. Her fuel was low. Her weapons were nearly empty. "Dokdo, this is Sejin," she said into her communicator. "I have an idea." Captain Sung-ho's voice came back. "I am listening." "The command vessel's shields are weakest at the engine section. If I can get close enough, I can hit it with everything I have left. That is a suicide mission. Not if I time it right. There was silence on the channel. Then Sung-ho spoke again. Seo-jin, be careful. She smiled. I am always careful, Captain. Her fighter shot forward, faster than any ship the Dominion had ever seen. Guardian vessels tried to intercept her, but she dodged them like they were standing still. She twisted and spun and dove through gaps that should not have existed. The command vessel grew larger in her view. She could see the Sovereign Voice's chamber, glowing red through the black metal. Her weapons locked on target. Her finger touched the trigger. Then an enemy shot hit her engine. The fighter began to spin. Warning lights flashed everywhere. Seo-jin had seconds to decide. She did not hesitate. She aimed her dying ship at the command vessel and pushed the engines to maximum. At the last moment, she pulled the ejection handle. The fighter slammed into the Sovereign Voice's chamber and exploded. Seo-jin's escape pod shot away from the blast. She tumbled through the debris, surrounded by fire and metal and the screaming of dying ships. When the Coalition rescue team found her 2 hours later, she was floating in space, her oxygen almost gone, singing an old song her father had taught her when she was small. The Sovereign Voice was dead. The command vessel was destroyed, and the Dominion fleet was running. On the surface of Keth Prime, Commander Hyunwoo watched the enemy soldiers retreat. They left their weapons behind. They left their dead behind. They ran like animals fleeing a forest fire. He sat down in the rubble of a destroyed building and looked at the sky. Human ships flew overhead, chasing the last Dominion vessels away. We did it, Lieutenant Hana said beside him. She was wounded, her arm wrapped in bloody bandages, but she was smiling. Hyunwoo nodded slowly. Yes, he said. We did. In the silence that followed, he could hear something strange. It took him a moment to recognize it. Coalition soldiers were cheering. The Dominion did not just lose at Keth Prime. They broke. News of their defeat spread across the galaxy like fire. For the first time in 200 years, someone had beaten them. Someone had killed the Sovereign Voice. Someone had sent their fleet running, and that someone was a species no one had believed existed. In the weeks that followed, the remaining Dominion forces collapsed. Without the Sovereign Voice to lead them, they turned on each other, fighting for control of a broken empire. Coalition forces pushed them back, system by system, until they retreated beyond the edge of known space. The war was not over. It might never truly be over. But the immediate danger had passed. On a Coalition space station called Unity, a ceremony was held to honor the heroes of Keth Prime. Thousands of beings from dozens of species gathered to watch as medals were given to those who had fought. Pilot Seo-jin stood at the front, her arm still in a sling from her injuries. When they called her name, she walked forward slowly, her eyes on the floor. She did not feel like a hero. She had almost died. She had lost friends. She had seen things that would haunt her dreams for years. The Coalition president, an elderly being with 6 arms and gentle eyes, placed the medal around her neck. You saved us all, the president said. Seo-jin looked at the crowd. Thousands of alien faces stared back at her. Some were crying. Some were cheering. All of them were alive because of what she and her people had done. I just did my job, she said quietly. Commander Hyunwoo received his medal next. Then Sniper Jungwa, who looked uncomfortable in her dress uniform. Then Medic Mai Ray, who had saved more lives in that one battle than she could count. Captain Sung-ho stood with Admiral Yuna at the back of the hall, watching the ceremony. Your people are strange, Yuna said. Sung-ho raised an eyebrow. How so? You fight like demons. You show no fear. You do things that should be impossible. She paused. And then you act humble. You say you are just doing your jobs. You do not boast or demand rewards. Sung-ho thought about this for a moment. We have a saying on Earth, he said. The nail that sticks up gets hammered down. We are taught to be part of a group, not above it. We fight together. We win together. We lose together. But you almost never lose. Sung-ho smiled. Not when it matters. After the ceremony, the humans began the work of building something new. They did not ask for payment. They did not demand territory. They simply started helping. Engineer Dongwu worked with coalition scientists to improve their ships. In 3 months, the coalition fleet was twice and 3 times as strong. The technology was a mix of human ideas and alien knowledge, something neither species could have created alone. Medic Mireille helped build new hospitals on worlds that had been damaged by the Dominion. She trained local doctors in human techniques, showing them how to save lives that would have been lost before. She never stopped smiling, even when she was exhausted. Lieutenant Hana became an ambassador, traveling from world to world to explain her people to the coalition. She was patient and kind, answering the same questions again and again. Yes, humans really came from a death world. Yes, they really could survive things that would kill other species. No, they did not want to conquer anyone. They just wanted to help. Pilot Sojin returned to flying, leading a mixed squadron of human and coalition pilots. They called themselves the Keth Survivors, and they became legends in their own right. Sniper Junghwa went home to her mountain village on Earth. She had done enough fighting. Now she wanted peace. Commander Hyunwoo stayed in coalition space, training new soldiers, building new defenses. He knew the Dominion would return someday. He wanted to be ready. And Admiral Yuna traveled to Earth. She had never seen the human home world in peacetime. When her ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and she looked at the blue and green planets spinning below, she felt something strange in her chest. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. And it was home to the beings who had saved her people. Captain Sung-ho met her at the landing zone. He looked older than he had before the war. There was more gray in his hair, more lines on his face. But his eyes were still warm. "Welcome back, Admiral," he said. They walked through the city of Seoul together. Yuna saw humans living their lives, going to work, raising children, building futures. They did not look like the monsters from the old legends. They looked like anyone else. "May I ask you something?" Yuna said, "Of course. Why did you help us?" "You did not know us. We were strangers. We could have been enemies. Why risk everything for people you had never met?" Sung-ho was quiet for a long moment. They walked past a park where children were playing, their laughter filling the air. "Because that is who we are," he finally said. "We are not perfect. We have made terrible mistakes. We have wars in our history that shame us. We have done things to each other that we can never truly repair." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "But we have also done something else. We have reached out. We have helped. We have crossed oceans and climbed mountains and now cross stars to find others. Because being alone is the one thing we cannot bear." Yuna thought about his words. She thought about the legends she had heard as a child. The stories of the monsters from the death world. Those stories were wrong. The humans were not monsters. They were something far more dangerous. They were kind. In the years that followed, humanity took its place in the coalition. Not as conquerors. Not as legends. Just as partners. They shared their technology and their medicine and their music. They built bridges between worlds. They made friends of strangers. And on coalition worlds, parents still told stories to their children. But the stories had changed. Once upon a time, they would say, there was a species that lived on a world that tried to kill them every day. A world of burning suns and frozen mountains and crushing oceans. A world where death waited around every corner. The children would listen with wide eyes. But these beings did not give up. They fought and survived and built wonderful things. And when they learned that others needed help, they did not hesitate. They crossed the stars. They faced monsters. They won. The parents would smile. They call themselves humans. And they are our friends. In a small house on Earth, in a city called Seoul, Captain Park Sung-ho sat with his grandchildren and told them stories of the stars. They listened with wonder, not knowing that their grandfather was a hero, not knowing that their species had changed the galaxy. They were just children, dreaming of the future. And somewhere, in the darkness between stars, the future was dreaming of them.